Okay, today's morning medicine is Argentum Cyanatum and Argentum Iodatum. Argentum is silver, the metal silver. Cyanide is cyanatum. And then the other one is silver and iodatum, which is iodide, which iodine is for your thyroid, things like that. So before I get into that, though, so my wife's, yeah, I asked her yesterday. She went back to taking care of uh, old folks. So she's running and lifting and walking, and that was going to be the real test. I wanted to see. She hasn't done it in a while, but and I'm thinking, okay, is it getting better because of the phosphoric acid I gave her, or is it getting better because of the she's just not running around as much. So yesterday was her second day. And while she was out there, I said, "How's your foot?" She said, "Surprisingly well." She says, "It doesn't bother me as much." So just from a little sugar tablet. And meanwhile, when she went to the doctors, she asked them, "How do you like my haircut?" I, I was on a call, man, and I just said, this is like 8 hours. I was with Tony Robbins and Dean and them guys, and it was just 8 hours long. And eventually, I got to a point where there wasn't a whole lot of info being done, and I just started shaving my head, and I just shave. I don't care, you know. So I went up. My sister's like, "Did you cut your hair again?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "But the back's all cattywampus." Like, okay. So I did it again. I said it takes me 2 or 3 times, but I usually end up getting it. So my wife said it's surprisingly well. So that little sugar tablet, phosphoric acid. Now it took me 5 or 6 medicines to figure out which one it was. One of them, calcarb, that palliated the pains in her legs. Didn't do much for the foot. I was trying Ruta because I'm thinking, is that I was prejudging this thing. That's why you got to be an observer. So I prejudged it. I gave a Ruta. Not working. Okay, aching in legs. Okay, calcarb. And then finally, when I got down to where, I'm thinking, I got to push so hard in her legs. I use shiatsu on her, and I got to push so hard down into the deep part of her leg. What is that deep part? Oh, the peristeum, which is perineum, peristeum. Anyways, it's the sheath over the bones and that, and just the real deep tissues. So I'm okay. Let's look it up. I look under legs. What, aching, I think, and then or pain, and then down to I think I went to peristeum even. I think it was there, and there was a few medicines. So I looked at a couple of them. Then I go into here like this materia medica, and I start looking at the medicines to see. And when I looked at phosphoric acid, it says loves bubbly water. Now you wouldn't think, well, how could that help you to resolve a medical case? Doctors wouldn't be thinking about that, I don't think. I don't know for sure. But her loving bubbly water, and that phosphoric acid, just saying that they love bubbly water. Bubbles come from the phosphoric acid in that. So I went off that, and that thing worked. So you just never know. Just like the doctor, the guy in the homeopath in India, he's like going after cancer in the ear, and he's, the stomach issues was the worst thing for this guy. So it was an emotional stress that came out into a physical symptoms. So that's holding, as far as I can tell. I can actually even touch the bump on the bottom of her foot. Now she says that does ache still. So now I may have to, I'm still looking at it. You just never know. This may just fully do it. I may have to bump up a higher dose of phosphoric acid, or even go lower and go longer. You know, it's not always going higher. It can be going lower and just longer time frame. And, and if I do go lower, I can have her take it more often. But anyways, so that's that one. And now the other thing was, my dad, he had his vertebrae crushed years ago, and he's always in pain. He has to eat ibuprofens and stuff to function, to be able to relieve that pain. So I took that, and my mother, I had given arnica because she fell down the steps, hit her head, but she was in a car accident before that. So I'm thinking, okay, let's try some Nat Sulf on her, because her mental stuff seems to get really weird. She gets real angry, and that's a sign when someone's had a lot of head injuries and stuff. They will start getting angry and defensive and aggressive, and just really acting up like that and moody. And she's been getting like that, So is that is that a constitutional thing? Is that from her upbringing? Is that from the head injuries? So, anyways, I gave her Nat Sulf in a. I didn't get to pond hers, but I gave her Nat Sulf in a her drink she takes up at night. She puts water in there. I don't get to pond it, but probably every time she drinks it, sets it down. That's a jolt to it. That could be considered pounding. My dad, he set his water down after we were done eating. My sister, we all had dinner together, and I took and put hypericum in his bottle of water, walked into the living room and pounded it 100 times, set it down. Now, when I went back, he had finished that. So now he's got hypericum in his, and that's hypericum's for any kind of nerve damage and that, and it's really good for the spine, especially if you fell on your coccyx. So anyways, I got those two. It's a shame that people. That's why I'm out here. I want everybody to have this in their hand, because those doctors with my wife looked at that bump on her foot and they're like, "Hey, come here, look at this. I've never seen this before." What'd they do for you, Di? What'd they say? Nothing. They just sent her home, I guess. I don't know. They had nothing to say about how to take care of it. So anyways, now I give her a homeopathic medicines. Well, I tried a few of them, which that might be what you have to do. You may have to try a few if you're not perceiving, and that's what I'm going to go through is case taking. If you're not perceiving the total picture of the case, you're just focused on the symptom, the etiology or the cause, what happened, things like that. You're not focused on the whole patient. Now, when I sat back and I said, okay, let's see what's going on with this. I'm going deep, and then once I looked at all that, and then I said, yeah, she likes bubbly water, or soda pop, which has bubbles in it. They love that stuff. Okay, phosphoric acid. I hit it right. Who would ever think that would be the symptom or the factor that would cause you to find the right remedy? So yeah, and then like I say with me, I'll go over some of my stuff. I'll use the walking pneumonia. I had as a child set up a chronic situation with my lungs. I've always had flus, colds, everything always goes to my lungs. That's why when COVID came, I made sure I took one. Antimonium tarp's really good from keeping mucus from building up in the lungs and clearing the lungs and all that. So I wasn't worried about all the other symptoms. I worked 12 hours a day for 2 weeks. Now, it was rough because my wife said I'd come home, throw my bag down and pass out, get back up, get a bite to eat, and go, back to work. But anyways, I took that to keep it out, but I still have chronic lung issues. As you see, you look at my videos, sometimes I wake up in the morning, I'm coughing stuff up. So I need to sit down and take my whole case and look and see. Now, I had poison ivy when I was young, and I've been taking Rust Tox. And, from that poison ivy situation, I had joint issues. I would always have lots of joint, like rheumatism. Weather comes, I'd have pains and aches in the joints. So I took a lot of Rust Tox, so that kind of helped that. So now I'm thinking, okay, now I may be beyond that, the skin issues or the Rust Tox joint issues. Now I'll go back to the lung issues with the walking pneumonia I had and start working on that. So I just really need to take my case or see what's going on there. So let's get into it. Argentum Cyanatum. I can say these words. Now these are two small remedies. They're most likely not used very often, but in certain cases, you may be. It may call for Argentum metallicum, which is one of the main remedies. It's silver, the metal silver. You may be using that and it doesn't work. You may consider Argentum Cyanatum if it's indicated, or Argentum Iodatum. One of these may help the case you're on because it's indicating Argentum metallicum, which is silver, but it's not doing the trick. So you may want to consider one of these. So, all right. So Argentum, okay, folklore as a result of inhaling fumes while silvering. So silvering, I don't know what they were doing when they were silvering. Putting silver on stuff? I don't know. But she was silvering with Argentin. A woman experienced some severe poisoning symptoms. Among the most prominent were in the throat, scraping in the throat, sense of constriction and burning, violent pain in suprasternal fossa. That's that little indentation. Can you see me? Wait, where am I? Oh, up a little further. That's that little indentation right here on between the sternum and the throat. You know, that little indentation. They have super internal fossa. They had violent pain there and under the sternum. Every time she turned to one side. Interesting symptom. So she turns to one side. It doesn't say left or right. She gets that violent pain there. Suffocative attack, respiration difficult, and short, constant, dry, spasmodic cough, allowing her to articulate, but one word at a time. So she can't hardly talk because of this, that cough comes on. Painful cramps in feet. The face and tongue were very red. Okay, so I don't know if I want to get into that. Angina. Okay, let's just do this. Okay, so cancer of the tongue for Argentum Cyanatum and larynx. That's a 3. That's a big one. So that's why I say if you're in, you're using, you know, you got an indicated remedy that says Argentum Metallicum, which is silver, and it's not working. You know, I mean, if you had cancer of the tongue and larynx, probably Argentum Cyanatum and a few other ones would be under that cancer of the tongue and larynx. You'd have to do differentials, which I'm going to get into. Well, I'm not going to get into that today. I already think I did that, or no, that's the next one. But cancer of the tongue and larynx, angina pectoris, which is heart troubles, asthma, spasmodic cough, cramps, and spasm of the esophagus. So, you know, a lot of asthma remedies, you know, cough remedies, a lot of them, a lot of heart remedies, you know, different things wrong with the heart, cramps and spasms of the esophagus. So there, you know, there could be some remedies there. But what I'm trying to get at here is you are, when you go to, you're looking up some of these things, angina, asthma, you have a bunch of different remedies. Now you have to differentiate between them, you know. So, in other words, a differentiate is is it better by? Here's a differentiation. This is the easiest one. Is it better by motion, worse by motion? You know, that is better by motion is Russ Talks. Worse by motion is um, Bryonia, and that's the thing. My wife, you know, she was saying, yeah, it was my foot was really, because now the legs aren't aching now. The foot, it's still got that bump and it's not as painful because I can actually touch it. But she said, yeah, it was really killing me when I woke up. Okay. And then, you know, while she was working, she said, yeah, I don't think she said I don't know what kind of pain she said she was having, but it was better. But it was really hurting when she woke up. So I started thinking Russ Talks because, you know, when you have them differentials in your mind, you know, you start thinking that way. And I'm thinking, well, maybe once, you know, this phosphoric acid may be doing the trick, stay on it for a while. But if it doesn't get rid of that bump on her foot or take care of it, then maybe it's a Russ Talks situation at that point. You know, that's why Ruta, Russ Talks, one of them would have been what I'd have considered for the bottom of her foot. I went with Ruta because that's good for ligaments and tendons and that. I didn't even consider Russ Talks, but when she said my foot was killing me in the morning, I got up, you know, well, now that I'm at work, it's not as bad, you know, so that is a Russ Talks symptom that I might want to consider. All right, so let's go to it. Argentum Iodatum, which is silver plus iodide. I don't know what they use that for, but you know, a lot of these chemicals and a lot of these substances that they mix together, they find, you know, they're chemically doing this stuff to find out, man, let's see what this is good for. Let's see if we put these two things together, what it's good for. That's in the whole scientific community. That's not homeopathic. So, silver iodide is what it is. And what was the other one? Silver cyanide is the first one, and silver iodide is the next one. Hale has suggested Argentum Iodatum as a remedy for conditions presenting symptoms of both the silver and the iodide components. So, what are those components? And now you could go down, you could look at Argentum Metallicum, right? And those symptoms are all part of that, right? And then you go to iodatum, which is iodide. You go to that, and those symptoms would be, so when you mix these two, you get a little bit of each of those symptoms. So folklore, okay. In practice, Hale found Argentum iodatum of great value in disorders of the throat, pharynx, larynx, and bronchia. So a lot of lung and throat issues, especially like iodatum is undoubtedly good for the thyroid. Some peculiar mental disorders, glandular affections. That's why I said the iodide being good for the thyroid. Catarrhs, which is thick mucus, and disorders of the heart, which is that angina and all that stuff. All right. So disorders of throat, pharynx, bronchia, mental disorders, glandular affections, catarrhs, and heart disorders. Now I don't know how. Obviously, if this was like tomorrow's Argentum Metallicum, which is silver, that one's proven. They got a lot of proving on that one. Obviously, they didn't prove these two medicines as much as they could have. They found some things that worked for it. And they might. Anyways, but they didn't prove it all the way out. Otherwise, you'd have what's going on with the mind, the abdomen, the back, the chest, the ears, the eyes, and I'd have all that stuff listed out that you could come in, and if you had a person, you took their symptoms and you find out all these things that's going on with your the person that's in front of you, then you can go match it to all the things that are going on here. So these medicines, if we could convince the medical community, when my goal is to do that too, not only get it into everybody's hands so they start utilizing it, maybe that'll push the medical community over board to say, yeah, let's start incorporating homeopathic medicine with our medicine. What was it? Oliver Wendell Holmes said if they threw all the drugs in the ocean, medical practice would be a lot better. In other words, surgery, bone setting, um, different things like that. But the drugs, he realizes, basically doing harm. A lot of it's doing, especially in his time, they were giving mercury to people for stuff, and that has a whole set of side effects. They were bleeding them, and all kinds of stuff. And have we advanced? Well, we're irradiating people. That's it's it helping? So, yeah, it's helping. We're giving them these drugs that we have to at the end of every commercial when they try to sell these drugs. They basically give all these side effects that it could be. Now, not everybody's going to get them, but you have to have this susceptibility, which I'm going to get into now. So how to analyze a case. So I went over in the last few on how to analyze this cases. We have to perceive what has to be cured. And that's why I say you're going in as a non-judgmental observer. So you're not, and that's where the whole breakdown can come in taking a case is you're observing something, but you're throwing in, oh, you know what, I like my wife's foot. Oh, you know what, maybe this is the tendon in the foot. Instead of that, you just take it down and you take everything down and you keep asking questions. What do you like to eat? How's your sleep? All the stuff. How's your head? You get headaches often. Do you have any pains in your heart? Your kidneys working fine? All these things. You want to just take everything down. Then you can go back and analyze it. So you want to perceive what's to be cured. You really want to state. That state is, the most, what's the top state? What's the top layer of that, that person? So they have a lot of etiologies, a lot of things that came in, did damage to them, whether it's a cold, a flu, poison ivy like me, the walking pneumonia, a grief, a loss, those points in their life is an etiology, something that came in and either tore the vital force and caused an energy leak, or it slowly worked on it, a grief, a grief, a grief. This thing keeps happening, and then there's a tear. That's it. I can't take it anymore. Like the lady in Germany, she didn't want to go out and take care of any business because she, for I don't know how many years, for 14 hours a day, she worked, had to grow up her kid. I don't know how many kids she had, but it had to grow up her kid, and just all that trauma just now she's like, that's it. I can't take it anymore. I don't even want to go shopping. I really have to work it up. So that's a state she's in. And that's all set up by an etiology. Hers was slower, a little, now I don't doubt. I don't know why she was a single parent, but that whole divorce and that whole thing there was probably a big rip in her vital force. Then the small rip was, constant, constant stress eventually broke. And now between the two of them, she just can't, she, really has to and get fired up to go and actually do something. Otherwise, she's just like can't handle it. So you want to perceive what's going on. Then after we get, now that's the scan. We're scanning and getting all the information, everything we can about them. Now we have to analyze the symptoms. So we want to put them in groups: mentals, under mentals, physicals, under physicals, and you're looking for the chief complaint or the top layer. What is happening right now that, because that'll, you want to clarify the case. So whatever happened recently can you can see stuff in the back, you can see a medicine they need later on. But what is going on now? Once you peel that layer off, whatever it is, an injury, an accident, once you peel that off, now you'll see that picture clearer of the next layer that's on the person. So you want to perceive the state and the structure of the whole case. What are strong symptoms? What are strong locations? What are weak symptoms? What are generals? All that kind of stuff. Then you want to, you're looking for keynotes. What is the keynotes? So now you take the etiologies, you rewrite the case, all the mentals together, all the physicals together, the etiologies, you start putting stars, arrows, different things, and he does underlines. 3 underlines is a really strong etiology and symptom. Symptoms always come out of those etiologies. And like a 2 is not, it's there, and a 1 is just, it's there, but it's not really a big thing. So once you go through the etiologies, now today I want to get into sorting out the layers, because, if you start hitting too deep of a layer, that usually won't take care of things. You really want to see what's the chief complaint right now, what's on the top layer, so that you can peel that off. So sorting out layers, you do a timeline. So he says by drawing a line down the center of the paper, writing the etiologies or the injuries or illnesses or sicknesses is what an etiology is. The time you put the etiology down, or the symptom, or the what happened at that time in their life, and you put the date next to that event. So when you do that, now you can see an actual timeline of things that happened. By drawing that line, by drawing a line in the center of the paper and putting that next, the time next to it, now okay, if you start giving a medicine and they start getting better, you'll see that clear break where that, that injury, illness, whatever happened, you'll see a clear break where they'll all of a sudden change. And you'll see, I'll get that in the bottom of this. So then now, we're in a new layer. Now you're in a new layer. So from an etiology, we construct a timeline. So let's take me, for instance. I had pneumonia, okay? Walking pneumonia, and I'm sure they took care of it by antibiotics, which is not the best way to do it, but it saves lives. So, hey, power to it. Then I had poison ivy. I think it was the next sort of thing. Try to remember. But then I had poison ivy for I don't know how many years. 10 years, and it was a trauma because I would get big poison ivy welts or whatever, bumps on me, and then my mother would scrub it down with a brush, and that kind of felt good, like, oh yeah, get it there, oh yeah, and while I was in the tub, and then she would pour Clorox on it. Man, I'd come out of that tub running around screaming like, ah, that was so. Yeah, that was a whole etiology there. That set something up. Then later in life, what did I have? I had ear problems. They had to put a tube in my eustachian tube or something like that for it to drain. And then I had a cyst on my ear. Then so as you see, you keep having each I would put down timelines. At whatever I was, 5 years old, had walking pneumonia. At I don't know, 8 years old, I had poison ivy for the next how many years. I was in high school when I had the ear stuff. Well, I had ear stuff before that. I don't know when the eustachian tube. Now that was probably in the same time I kept getting that poison ivy. Uh, and the poison ivy, well, anyways, so now then I have a surgery on my ear to get a cyst out. So I had two surgeries there, one for the eustachian tube and one for the cyst. So each time these things happen, now the cyst was my body trying to push something out. I don't know what the deal was with the ear, but anyways, so that puts down timelines. So now you can see each time you'll go back and things will get, as things get better, you'll see, oh, that cleared up. Now we're into, the poison ivy, and, I've taken a lot of Russ Talks for the poison ivy because I had a lot of joint issues, just rheumatism, aching joints. And I don't have that anymore because of the Russ Talks I took. So that is, you're constructing this timeline. So two things. You can see where the layer is. And then when you start giving medicines, you see once that layer's peeled off, now you see the next etiology or the layer that's been laid down by a problem, So I clear up the joint problems. Now I still have ear problems. Now we're into the ear problems. Now I go that joint layer's gone. Now I'm into the ear problems. Now I'm working on the ear problems. That goes away. Now I'm back to the lung problems from the pneumonia that set that up. So now I peel that off. So person separate acutes from chronic. So an acute is an injury, had an injury, a car accident, and I've had them, but anyways, you had a car accident, that set up a pain, and that's an acute. A chronic is, I had pneumonia, now I always have lung problems, and that's what I'm dealing with me. A person goes through a certain stress, and a layer is laid down. So that stress tears the vital force, and there's an energy leak. And that's what he always says, he stresses that layer that's there is an energy leak, and you want to get rid of it. If it's an acute, I had a knee injury, okay, that's an acute thing, you get rid of it. A chronic is, I still have lung issues. I had lung issues back when I was a child. So there's probably a miasm there that goes back. So now the person, they have to have certain sensitivities. If they're not sensitive, why does the flu come through? Some people get sick, even the people that get vaccinated. And I wonder, is that really working? They get vaccinated and they still get the flu, so yeah, you have to be sensitive to it. Someone, flu comes in, this person doesn't get it, that person does. Why? They have to have a sensitivity. Motivating factors, what is the motivating factor? Is there an injury, an illness, a thing? What is motivating that? Then you got your mental and emotional symptoms, like a Staphylococcus aureus will hold everything in. They're getting abused and they hold it all in, and it finally comes out somewhere and they get sick. A cholesynthesis person would not hold it in, they'd be aggressive and fight back. So those are mental symptoms. Generals are, what do they like to eat? What do they don't like to eat? What, different general things. So here's an example. Someone like cold drinks. Now they want warm drinks. This is a sign of a layer change. So whether it went from, they were liking cold drinks, right? and then they had an injury. Now they like warm drinks. Or it goes back, you give a medicine and they're liking warm drinks, and all of a sudden they like cold drinks now. You know, you went through a layer change. They're introverted, now they're extroverted, like Nat Mur. Nat Mur's, they like salt, this and that. They're introverted. That's the beginning. That's like maybe a constitutional Nat Mur thing. Later on, they're naked singing on a windmill. You know that they're extroverted now. They don't care less. That's the you know, within a layer there is steps. You know, there is different what do they call it? Anyways, there's different areas. You know, different stages. Stages. That's what I'm looking for. There's different stages. I'm trying to hurry. I am done. So there's different stages. So the stage Nat Mur's first is introverted. The last stage of a Nat Mur with a sickness is they're extroverted. They're naked. They're running around naked. So if you have an etiology, usually you can see the change. So right when you know that they had that grief at this time in their life, and you're given a medicine, and then that goes away, and boom, all of a sudden it changed. You know that etiology has been taken care of. Now you can go on to the next one. So that is morning medicine. You can age, but you don't have to get old. That minute.